London, 1862. The rain fell in cold, relentless sheets, pummeling the cobblestones outside the modest apartments on Gloucester Street. Inside, Olivia Kent stared at the letter in her trembling hands, its official seal broken, its message devastating. Her father, the once respected Dr. Kent, had died in debtor's prison, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and a tarnished family name. "Miss Kent, there's a gentleman waiting in the parlour." Mrs. Hobbs, her landlady, appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of suspicion and poorly concealed curiosity. "Very fine gentleman, he is. Says it's urgent business." Olivia hastily tucked the letter into her pocket and smoothed her simple grey dress. She had no idea who would call upon her now, with her father barely cold in his pauper's grave. The few acquaintances who hadn't abandoned them after the scandal had sent perfunctory notes of condolence, nothing more. The man who stood by the window, examining the dreary view of rain-slicked streets, turned as she entered. Tall and imposing in an immaculately tailored black coat, his dark hair swept back from a severe brow, he seemed to fill the small room with his presence. "Miss Kent." He bowed slightly. "I am Charles Sutherland, Baron Westmoreland." Olivia cursed automatically, her governess training taking over when her thoughts failed her. "My lord. To what do I owe this unexpected honor?" His grey eyes assessed her coolly. "I knew your father, Miss Kent. Not well, but enough to be aware of his circumstances. I come to offer you a position." Hope flickered briefly. Perhaps as a governess to his children? It would be a respectable way to support herself, now that she faced utter destitution. "I require a wife, Miss Kent." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia's mouth went dry. "I beg your pardon, my lord." "A marriage of convenience," he continued, his tone matter-of-fact. "You would have my name, my protection, a generous allowance. In return, you would manage my household, appear at my side when social obligations demand it, and help raise my daughter." "Your daughter," she repeated faintly. "Margaret. She is 6. Her mother died in childbirth." His expression remained impassive, revealing nothing of his feelings on the matter. "I have been informed that a baroness would better serve her education than a succession of governesses." Olivia's mind whirled. "Forgive me, Lord Westmoreland, but this is most irregular. We are strangers to one another. Perhaps, but not unknown quantities. Your reputation as a lady of intelligence and proper breeding remains intact, despite your father's indiscretions. I require a wife of impeccable character but modest expectations. You require security and protection from the vagaries of fortune. It is a practical arrangement." Olivia felt a flare of indignation. "My lord, you speak as if purchasing a horse." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, that she would speak so boldly. "I speak plainly, Miss Kent, because I respect your intelligence. This is not a romantic proposal, but a practical solution to both our dilemmas." "And what dilemma do you face, sir, that only a hasty marriage can solve?" He paced to the window again, his profile sharp against the grey light. "Society has certain expectations of men in my position. A widower with a young daughter should remarry. My affairs require attention I cannot give while also ensuring Margaret receives proper female guidance. And—" He hesitated. "There have been rumors." "Rumors? Nothing of consequence." His dismissal was swift. Merely the usual speculation that accompanies a man who has remained unmarried too long after being widowed. "People talk, Miss Kent. It affects business, political alliances." He turned to face her again. "Your presence would silence such talk." Olivia took a deep breath. "And if I refuse?" "Then I wish you good day and good fortune." He reached for his hat. "Though I understand your father's creditors are quite determined to collect what they are owed. Even from his daughter." The threat was clear, if delicately delivered. She had until the end of the month before she would be evicted, with no references, no money, and nowhere to go. "May I have time to consider?" she asked, struggling to maintain her composure. "Until tomorrow morning." I've taken rooms at the Clarendon. Send word of your decision there. He bowed formally. Good day, Miss Kent. After he left, Olivia sank into a chair, her thoughts in turmoil. Marriage to a stranger, a cold, calculating aristocrat who saw her as nothing more than a convenient solution to his social problems. Yet what choice did she have? The streets of London held no mercy for unmarried women without means or connections. That night, she wrote her acceptance with a steady hand that belied her inner turmoil. 3 days later, she stood in the private chapel of Sutherland Manor, speaking vows to a man whose true nature remained a mystery to her. The ceremony was brief, attended only by the required witnesses and Margaret, a solemn child with her father's grey eyes and dark hair, who regarded Olivia with wary curiosity. "Welcome to Sutherland Manor, Baroness," Charles said formally as they entered the grand entrance hall afterward. The house was magnificent, all marble floors and sweeping staircases, portraits of stern Sutherlands glaring down from the walls. "Thank you, my lord." Olivia kept her voice steady, though her heart pounded. This was her home now, this imposing stranger her husband, this silent child her stepdaughter. "Mrs. Phillips will show you to your chambers. I have business in the library." He bowed slightly. "We dine at 7. And with that, he was gone, leaving Olivia to follow the housekeeper up the grand staircase, wondering what sort of bargain she had struck. Her rooms were beautiful, a bedchamber with silk hangings, a private sitting room with delicate furnishings, a dressing room where her pitifully few belongings looked lost among the grandeur. Connected to her suite by a discreet door was her husband's chamber, similarly appointed but more masculine in its decor. "His lordship rarely retires before midnight," Mrs. Phillips informed her with a knowing glance that made Olivia blush. "He's often in the library till the small hours." The first weeks passed in a strange, formal dance. Charles was unfailingly polite but distant, spending his days in London on business or shut away in his library when at home. They dined together each evening, making stilted conversation about estate matters or the weather. He never touched her, never entered her chambers, never gave any indication that he considered her anything more than an ornament for his house and a guardian for his daughter. It was Margaret who first breached the walls between them. Olivia had taken to reading in the gardens each afternoon, and one day found the child watching her from behind a hedge of roses. "Would you like to join me?" Olivia asked gently. Margaret approached cautiously. "What are you reading?" "The Water Babies." It's a new story, about a chimney sweep who becomes a water baby and has adventures. Margaret's eyes widened with interest. "Papa only reads me history books. Would you like me to read this to you instead?" The child nodded and settled beside her on the garden bench. Olivia began to read aloud, and was rewarded with the first smile she had seen on Margaret's solemn face. After that, they established a routine. Reading in the garden, walks in the park, lessons in the schoolroom Olivia had set up in a sunny corner of the house. Margaret gradually emerged from her shell, revealing a bright, inquisitive mind and a hunger for affection that broke Olivia's heart. "Why doesn't Papa ever play with me?" Margaret asked one rainy afternoon as they sat building a castle from playing cards. Olivia considered her answer carefully. "Your father has many responsibilities." "Did he play with Mama?" I don't know, dear. You would have to ask him." Margaret shook her head. "He doesn't like to talk about Mama. He gets that look, like when the tenants come with problems." That evening, Olivia found herself watching Charles across the dinner table with new eyes. What pain lay beneath that controlled exterior? What memories haunted him? Margaret asked about her mother today. She ventured when the servants had withdrawn. Charles's hand tightened on his wine glass. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. It wasn't my place. But she's curious, as any child would be. She's too young to understand." "Perhaps. But children often understand more than we give them credit for." He met her gaze, his eyes unreadable. "My first marriage was not a success, Olivia. Catherine was high-strung. Emotional. She found country life isolating, motherhood overwhelming. She died before we could resolve our differences. It was more than he had ever shared with her. Olivia felt a curious pang at the tenderness with which he spoke his first wife's name. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "It was a long time ago." He stood abruptly. "If you'll excuse me, I have correspondence to attend to." As spring turned to summer, Olivia found herself settling into her role as Baroness. She reorganized the household, charmed the local gentry when they called, and won over the servants with her quiet competence and lack of aristocratic airs. Only her relationship with Charles remained unchanged, formal, distant, correct. Until the night of the midsummer ball at neighboring Thornfield Hall. Olivia had taken great care with her appearance, wearing a gown of deep blue silk that Mrs. Phillips assured her was most becoming. When Charles met her in the entrance hall, something flickered in his eyes, appreciation, perhaps, or surprise. "You look very well, Olivia," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you, my lord." She took his arm, acutely aware of his nearness, the clean scent of his shaving soap, the warmth of his body through the layers of clothing that separated them. At Thornfield, they played their parts perfectly, the distinguished baron and his charming wife, circulating among the county families, dancing one obligatory dance together before separating to fulfill their social duties. Olivia was chatting with the vicar's wife when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Yes, that's her, the new Lady Westmoreland," a woman's voice said, lowered but not enough. "Daughter of that doctor who was imprisoned for fraud. They say Sutherland married her out of pity." "Or necessity," another voice replied. "You know there were rumors about him and that actress. Perhaps he needed a respectable wife quickly to quell the gossip. Well, she's plain enough not to tempt him to stray again. Poor creature probably thinks she made a grand match, when really she's just a convenient shield for his indiscretions." Olivia kept her smile fixed in place though her cheeks burned with humiliation. Was that truly how society viewed her marriage? As an act of pity or expediency, with her as the pathetic beneficiary of Charles's charity? Worse, was it true? Was there an actress, an indiscretion, that had prompted his sudden need for a wife? He had mentioned rumors, but nothing specific. She excused herself and retreated to a quiet alcove, fighting to regain her composure. She would not give those gossips the satisfaction of seeing her distress. "Are you unwell?" She turned to find Charles watching her, his expression concerned. "Merely overwarm." She forced a smile. "The room is rather crowded." He studied her face. "You've heard something that upset you." It wasn't a question. Olivia looked away. "Nothing of consequence." "Olivia." His voice softened slightly. "Tell me." Perhaps it was his unexpected gentleness, or her own wounded pride, but the words spilled out before she could stop them. "Is it true you married me to distract from a scandal?" "An actress, they said." His face hardened. "Who said this?" "It doesn't matter." "Is it true?" He hesitated, and in that moment, Olivia knew it was. She turned to leave, but he caught her arm. "Not here," he said quietly. "We'll discuss this at home." The carriage ride back to Sutherland Manor passed in tense silence. Once inside, Charles led her to the library, poured 2 glasses of brandy, and handed one to her. "Drink," he said. "You look like you need it." She took a sip, welcoming the burn in her throat. "Tell me the truth." "Please." He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of discomposure. "There was no actress. There was, however, talk, a malicious, unfounded talk, about my friendship with Lord Halsey." "Lord Halsey?" Olivia frowned, confused. "A very close friend since our school days. We spent much time together after Catherine died. He helped me through the worst of my grief." Charles's expression tightened. "Some people found our friendship suspicious. Especially when Thomas, Lord Halsey, refused several advantageous marriages." Understanding dawned slowly. "They thought that you and he were." "Yes." His voice was clipped. "Absurd, of course, but such rumors can destroy a man, no matter how false. When Thomas became engaged last winter, the talk subsided, but my solicitor advised that I, too, should marry, to put an end to it completely. And so you found me, Olivia said softly. Desperate enough not to ask too many questions. I found a woman of intelligence and character, whose circumstances allowed her to accept a marriage that might not include conventional intimacies. The implication hung in the air between them. Olivia set down her glass carefully. Are you saying our marriage will never be consummated? Charles looked away. I thought it best to be clear about my expectations. Or lack thereof. Because of your feelings for Lord Halsey. No, he said sharply. Because I have no wish to bring another child into this world only to lose its mother, as I lost Catherine. As Margaret lost her mother. Olivia stared at him. You blame yourself for her death. She died giving birth to my child. Who else should I blame? His voice was bitter. The doctor said another pregnancy would be dangerous. I should have been more careful. Charles. It was the first time she had used his given name, and it seemed to startle him. Childbirth is always a risk, but that doesn't mean every woman will die from it. I won't take that chance again. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. You should retire, Olivia. It's late. But she didn't move. Is that the only reason you've kept your distance? Fear for my safety. He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, without turning, he said, No. Then why? Because I promised myself I would not make the same mistakes. Now he did turn, his eyes dark with emotion. Catherine married me for my title, my wealth. I married her for her beauty, her vivacity. Neither of us got what we truly wanted. We made each other miserable. I swore I would not enter another marriage of passion. And yet, Olivia said softly, here we are in a marriage with neither passion nor companionship. Merely two people sharing a house, playing parts for the world to see. Something flickered in his eyes. Is that how you see it? How else should I see it? You avoid my company except when necessary for appearances. You share nothing of yourself, your thoughts, your life. I am a convenient solution to your problems, nothing more. And what would you have me be? A devoted husband? A lover? His voice roughened. I told you from the beginning what to expect. You did, she acknowledged. And I accepted those terms when I had no choice. But now I find I want more than mere security. I want a true marriage, Charles. A partnership? If not with you, then. Then what? His eyes narrowed. You're considering leaving. I'm considering whether I've made a terrible mistake in accepting a half-life instead of taking my chances elsewhere. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. And where would you go? Back to poverty? To the mercy of your father's creditors. Anger flared in her. Is that a threat, my lord? Will you cast me out penniless if I displease you? No. The word was harsh. But neither will I keep you against your will. If you wish to leave, I will ensure you're provided for. But Margaret. I would never abandon Margaret, Olivia said fiercely. Whatever happens between us, I love that child. Something in his face softened at that. She loves you too. More than she ever loved her own mother, God forgive me for saying so. Catherine didn't love her. He sighed, suddenly looking weary. Catherine never wanted children. She saw Margaret as an inconvenience. A burden that kept her from London society. Olivia's heart ached for the solemn little girl who had never known a mother's love. No wonder she's so reserved. She's different with you, Charles said. Happier. You've been good for her. And for you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. His gaze met hers, unexpectedly vulnerable. Yes. For me too. A silence fell between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Then Charles stepped back, his expression closing again. It's late. We both need rest. Olivia nodded, recognizing his retreat. Good night, Charles. As she left the library, she felt his eyes on her back and wondered what might have happened if she had stayed. The next morning, a letter arrived that changed everything. Olivia was in the schoolroom with Margaret when Mrs. Phillips appeared, looking flustered. Begging your pardon, my lady, but there's a gentleman asking for you. Says it's most urgent. Did he give his name? Mr. Sebastian Thorn, my lady. Says he's an old acquaintance. Olivia frowned. The name was vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Please show him to the morning room, Mrs. Phillips. I'll be down directly. The man who awaited her was handsome in a flashy way, his clothes expensive but slightly too fashionable, his smile too practiced. Miss Kent. Or Lady Westmoreland now, I should say. He bowed with exaggerated courtesy. How elevated you've become since our last meeting. I'm afraid you have the advantage of me, Mr. Thorn. Come now, surely you remember your father's most promising student? I assisted him in his research for several years. Memory stirred, a young medical student, ambitious and ingratiating, often at her father's side during his final years of practice. I remember now, she said coolly. What brings you to Sutherland Manor, Mr. Thorn? His smile widened. A happy coincidence. I was passing through the area and heard of your fortunate marriage. Naturally, I had to pay my respects to the daughter of my esteemed mentor. Something in his manner made her uneasy. How kind. But I'm afraid I have duties that require my attention, so if you'll excuse me, actually, he interrupted, dropping his voice, I came hoping to discuss a private matter. Concerning your father's research notes. Olivia stiffened. My father's papers were seized when he was arrested. Not all of them. Thorn's eyes gleamed. He entrusted certain sensitive documents to me for safekeeping. Documents that might be of interest to the medical community or perhaps to the authorities. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. You're blackmailing me. He winced theatrically. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. You have come into a position of wealth and influence. I have information that could damage that position. Surely we can come to an understanding. What exactly are you implying about my father's research? Thorn circled the room, examining the expensive furnishings. Nothing that wasn't already suspected. That some of his more innovative treatments were undertaken without patient consent. That certain experimental procedures resulted in deaths that were misreported. That's a lie, Olivia said fiercely. Perhaps. But would society believe that? Would your noble husband stand by you if your father were posthumously revealed as not merely a debtor, but a murderer? Olivia felt ill. What do you want? £1,000 would ensure my discretion. He smiled. A small price for your continued happiness, wouldn't you agree? Before she could respond, the door opened and Charles entered, his expression thunderous. I don't believe you've been introduced to my husband, Olivia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Charles, this is Mr. Sebastian Thorn, a former student of my father's. Charles inclined his head slightly, his eyes cold. Mr. Thorn. I couldn't help overhearing the end of your conversation as I approached. Did I understand correctly that you're attempting to extort money from my wife? Thorn paled. My lord, there's been a misunderstanding, I think not. Charles moved to stand beside Olivia, his presence reassuring. You came to my home, threatened my wife, and demanded money. There is no misunderstanding. I merely offered to keep certain papers private, papers which, if they exist at all, were obtained illegally. Charles cut in. Dr. Kent's effects were seized by the court. Any documents in your possession were stolen. Thorn's confidence visibly wavered. The information they contain is irrelevant. Even if your allegations had merit, which I doubt, the law does not look kindly on blackmailers. Charles strode to the bell pull. I'm going to have my footman escort you off my property, Mr. Thorn. If you ever approach my wife again, I will see you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. 2 burly footmen appeared, and Thorn, seeing his scheme collapse, attempted a final threat. This isn't over. The world should know what kind of man her father was. The world already judged Dr. Kent, Charles said coldly. His reputation is beyond further damage, and my wife's is protected by my name and influence. Remember that before you spread malicious falsehoods. When Thorn had been forcibly removed, Charles turned to Olivia, his anger giving way to concern. Are you all right? The kindness in his voice undid her. To her horror, she felt tears welling up. I'm sorry. I never thought my father's mistakes would follow me here, would put you and Margaret at risk. Charles hesitated, then did something he had never done before. He took her hand in his touch gentle. You have nothing to apologize for, Olivia. Your father's actions are not your responsibility. But the scandal is nothing compared to what aristocratic families weather regularly. His mouth curved in a wry smile. My own grandfather was notorious for his gambling and womanizing. It hardly affected the family standing. She managed a watery laugh. Is that supposed to be reassuring? It's supposed to remind you that you're a Sutherland now, not a Kent. My name, my influence, my protection, they're yours. His voice softened. As is my loyalty. Olivia looked up at him, seeing something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, a warmth, a tenderness that belied his usual reserve. Thank you for defending me, she said quietly. His hand tightened on hers. I will always defend what is mine. The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver through her. Is that how you see me? As a possession? No. He released her hand, his expression troubled. Forgive me. That came out wrong. Then how do you see me, Charles? He turned away, moving to the window. As my wife. As Margaret's mother in all the ways that matter. As a woman who deserves better than I've given her. Charles, I haven't been fair to you, he continued, his back still to her. I married you for convenience, for appearances, but I've come to value your presence in my life, in Margaret's life. More than I expected to. It wasn't a declaration of love, but from this reserved, guarded man, it was a significant admission. I value your presence too, she said softly. He turned then, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. Do you? Even after I've kept you at arm's length, treated our marriage as a business arrangement. Even then. She took a step toward him. Because I've seen glimpses of the man beneath the baron, a devoted father, a loyal friend, a man of principle and honor. Something flickered in his eyes, hope, perhaps, or yearning. Olivia, the door burst open and Margaret ran in, followed by her nurse who was apologizing profusely. Papa! Olivia! Look what I drew! She thrust a drawing at them, oblivious to the moment she had interrupted. Charles composed himself and knelt to examine his daughter's artwork. Very fine, Margaret. Is that Sutherland Manor? Yes, and that's you, and Olivia, and me. She pointed to 3 stick figures in front of the house. We're a family. The simple statement hung in the air. Charles met Olivia's gaze over Margaret's head, his eyes filled with unspoken emotion. Yes, he said quietly. We are. That night, for the first time, he knocked on the connecting door between their chambers. Olivia, reading in bed, called for him to enter, her heart racing. Charles stood awkwardly in the doorway, still fully dressed though he had removed his cravat and jacket. I wanted to thank you, he said. For what? For being kind to Margaret. For making this house feel like a home again. For. He hesitated. For seeing something in me worth valuing, when I've given you little reason to. Olivia set her book aside. You're wrong. You've given me security, respect, a place in society. More than many women receive in marriage. But not love. The word hung between them. Not companionship. No, she agreed softly. Not those things. He took a step into the room. I don't know if I can offer love, Olivia. I've lived too long with grief and guilt and duty. But companionship? I would like to try, if you're willing. It was more than she had dared hope for. I am willing. His expression lightened, as if a burden had been lifted. Then perhaps we could start with something simple. Would you ride with me tomorrow? There's a part of the estate I'd like to show you. I'd like that. He nodded, seemingly unsure what to do next. Well, then. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Charles. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Olivia stared at it for a long time, hope unfurling in her heart like a flower reaching for the sun. The next day dawned bright and clear. They rode across the estate, Charles pointing out landmarks, explaining the history of the land, the challenges of managing it. Olivia found herself entranced not just by the beauty of the countryside, but by the transformation in her husband. Here, away from society's watchful eyes, he was more relaxed, more animated than she had ever seen him. They stopped at a small lake, dismounting to let the horses drink. Charles spread his coat on a fallen log for her to sit on. This was always my favorite place as a boy, he told her. I would escape here when my father was in one of his rages, or when the responsibilities of being the heir became too much. It's beautiful, Olivia said, watching sunlight dance on the water. Peaceful. I used to imagine bringing someone here someday. Someone who would understand why I loved it. He glanced at her, almost shyly. I think you understand. The admission, simple as it was, touched her deeply. I'm honored you shared it with me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the first they had ever shared. Tell me about your childhood, Charles said eventually. Were you happy? The question surprised her. In all their months of marriage, he had never asked about her past. Mostly, she said. My father was devoted to his work, but he always made time for me, especially after my mother died. I was 10 then. I didn't know you'd lost your mother so young. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. She looked out over the lake. The hardest part came later, watching my father's decline. His reputation was everything to him. When the accusation started, when patients began to leave, he changed. Became desperate, took risks. You don't have to defend him to me, Olivia. I'm not. He made terrible mistakes. But he wasn't the monster Thorne painted him as. He was just a human. Flawed. Afraid of failure. Charles considered this. I understand fear of failure. The weight of expectations, of legacy. Is that why you work so hard? Why you spend so much time in London on business? He looked surprised that she had noticed. Partly. The Sutherland estates were nearly ruined by my father's extravagance. I've spent years rebuilding our fortunes, securing Margaret's inheritance. And hiding from painful memories, she suggested gently. He gave a rueful smile. Perhaps that too. On the ride back, they talked more freely than ever before, about books they had read, places they had visited, dreams they had harbored as children. By the time they reached Sutherland Manor, something fundamental had shifted between them. That night at dinner, Margaret noticed it too. You're smiling, Papa, she observed, her head tilted curiously. Both of you are. Charles glanced at Olivia, his eyes warm. I suppose we are. Does that mean you're happy? Yes, he said, still looking at Olivia. I believe it does. As summer turned to autumn, their relationship continued to evolve. Charles began to join Olivia and Margaret for afternoon readings. They took drives together, called on neighbors as a family, spent evenings in the library discussing the books they were reading or the day's events. He still maintained separate sleeping chambers, but the door between them remained unlocked, an unspoken acknowledgement of possibility. And then came the night of the harvest ball at Sutherland Manor, the first major social event they had hosted as a couple. Olivia had spent weeks planning it, determined that everything would be perfect. Charles had watched her preparations with quiet amusement. "The house has never been so thoroughly turned out," he commented as she directed the placement of flowers in the ballroom. "Not even when my mother was alive." "I want it to be beautiful," she said, flushing slightly. "For your guests." "For our guests," he corrected. "And it will be beautiful, because you're overseeing it." The evening began splendidly. Olivia wore a gown of deep crimson that Mrs. Phillips had helped her select, her hair arranged in an elegant style that showed off the diamond earrings Charles had unexpectedly presented her with that afternoon. "You look magnificent," he murmured as they greeted their first guests together. The compliment warmed her, as did the admiring glances that followed her around the ballroom. For the first time, she felt truly like the Baroness Westmoreland, not an imposter playing a role. Until Lady Harrington arrived. The Countess swept into the ballroom in a cloud of expensive perfume and even more expensive jewelry, drawing every eye. Tall, statuesque, with golden hair and a confident smile, she approached Charles with the familiarity of an old acquaintance. "Charles, darling. How delightful to see you entertaining again. It's been far too long since Sutherland Manor hosted a proper ball. Eleanor." Charles bowed over her hand. "Welcome. May I present my wife, Olivia?" Olivia, the Countess of Harrington, is an old family friend. Charmed, Lady Harrington said, her assessing gaze making it clear she found Olivia lacking. How fortunate for Charles to have found someone willing to take on the challenges of Sutherland Manor. "The pleasure has been mine," Olivia replied evenly. "My husband's home is magnificent, as is his company." Lady Harrington's perfectly arched eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed? How refreshing to hear such conjugal devotion. Especially in a match that caused such speculation." Charles's expression hardened. "If you'll excuse us, Eleanor, we have other guests to attend to." As they moved away, Olivia felt her confidence faltering. "Who is she to you, Charles?" He hesitated. "Eleanor and I grew up together. Our families expected us to marry, but she chose Harrington instead, and Earl Outranks a baron, after all. She was widowed last year. And now she regrets her choice." Olivia guessed, seeing the way the Countess followed Charles with her eyes across the room. "What Eleanor regrets is irrelevant," Charles said firmly. "I made my choice when I married you." The words should have reassured her, but they didn't. A choice made for convenience, for appearances, was easily unmade when a better option presented itself. The evening wore on, and Olivia played her part perfectly, smiling and conversing with their guests, overseeing the supper arrangements, dancing when required. But her heart grew heavier as she observed Lady Harrington's determined pursuit of Charles, engaging him in private conversations, laughing at his remarks, touching his arm to emphasize a point. Worst of all was seeing how easily Charles fell into familiar patterns with her, their shared history evident in their interactions. They looked right together, both aristocratic, confident, belonging to the same world in a way Olivia never would. When the last guest had departed and they were alone in the entrance hall, Charles turned to her with a smile. "You were magnificent tonight." Everyone was impressed. Were they? Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Even Lady Harrington. His smile faded. "Eleanor's opinion is of no consequence. Isn't it? She seemed very interested in renewing your acquaintance." Charles sighed. "Eleanor has always wanted what she can't have. When she was engaged to Harrington, she suddenly found me fascinating. Now that I'm married, she's determined to recapture my attention." "And has she?" Olivia asked quietly. He looked at her in genuine surprise. "No. Not in the least. You seemed very comfortable with her. We've known each other since childhood. There's a familiarity, yes, but nothing more." He stepped closer. "Olivia, you can't possibly think I'd be interested in Eleanor." "Why not?" "She's beautiful, accomplished, from your world. A countess. The kind of woman who should be Baroness Westmoreland." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Is that what this is about? You think I married beneath me? Didn't you?" the daughter of a disgraced doctor, with no fortune, no connections, with intelligence, grace, kindness, he interrupted. With a gentle strength that has transformed this house into a home. With a heart that loves my child as her own. His voice softened. With a beauty that grows more compelling to me each day. Olivia stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Charles? I married you for convenience, yes, he admitted. But these past months with you have been the happiest I can remember. You've brought life back to this house, to Margaret, to me. He took her hand, his touch sending warmth through her. I didn't expect to feel this way again. I didn't want to. But you, Olivia, you've made me yearn for things I thought were lost to me. What things? She whispered. Connection. Joy? He lifted her hand to his lips. Love. The word hung between them, precious and fragile. Olivia felt tears gathering in her eyes. I never thought you would love me, she said softly. Neither did I. His smile was tender. But here we are. He drew her closer, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. May I kiss you, Baroness Sutherland? Please, she breathed. His lips met hers, gentle at first, then with growing intensity as she responded. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Stay with me tonight, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not as my Baroness, but as my wife. My love. Olivia's heart soared. Yes, she said simply. Tonight and all the nights to come. Later, as they lay together in the warm darkness of his bedchamber, Charles traced the curve of her cheek with tender fingers. I never thought I would find happiness again, he confessed. After Catherine, after everything. I believed that part of my life was over. And now? Olivia asked, her head pillowed on his chest. Now I understand that life offers second chances, if we're brave enough to take them. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I married you for appearances, Olivia, but your gentle spirit made me yearn for love again. Made me believe I might deserve it. You do deserve it, she said fiercely. We both do. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the warmth of their newfound love, the Baron and Baroness Westmoreland found what neither had expected in their marriage of convenience, a true union of hearts, a family bound by love rather than obligation, and the promise of happiness that would endure long after the gossips had found new subjects for their speculation. For Olivia, who had entered the marriage with little hope beyond security, the transformation seemed nothing short of miraculous. For Charles, who had walled himself off from emotional connection for so long, it was a homecoming he had never expected to experience. And for little Margaret, watching her father and Olivia at breakfast the next morning, noting their shared smiles and the new tenderness between them, it was simply the natural conclusion to the story that had begun the day Olivia Kent became Baroness Westmoreland. Are we going to be happy forever now? She asked, her child's intuition perceiving the change. Charles looked at Olivia, his eyes full of promise. Yes, Margaret. I believe we are.